So I'm going to delete this as well. Okay, so we're going to recap. Don't bother. We're going to recap. We're using the same data. Okay. If we're proceeding with new stuff, we're still proceeding with pivot tables. Okay. What I showed you in the last class was not anything on pivot tables at all. We've not even touched anything. Okay. So it's still pivot tables. All right. So we'll just do a brief of a recap and then we'll move on. Okay. So I'm looking for. I want to see, is it possible to, okay. All right, so now I have my table. Okay, remember this was the data set you used for the previous assignments. Okay, this is not the new data set I sent to us. Take note of that. Okay, this is not the new data set I sent to us. It is not that one that I titled data set for pivots. You need to take note of that. Okay, so this is the assignment data set, the last one that we solved in class. Okay, that I later used for pivoting. So this is the data set. So we're still continuing with this. Okay, so we just want to do a little bit of recap and then we move on. All right, so let's take it slowly so that everyone can follow along quickly. So what did I say a pivot table is in the last class? We said pivot table is a tool in Microsoft Excel that is used to summarize or aggregate a large data. The data does not even necessarily need to be large. Okay, pivot table can help you summarize or aggregate that data and extract meaningful insights from it. Okay, so in this case, we want to look at, someone asked a question on the WhatsApp group chat that, sir, can pivot table do everything that those functions that we learned can do? Can it do sum if, count if, and the likes? And the basis of pivot table really is the sum if, count ifs, and so on and so forth. Okay, if I tell you, oh, how many or what is the sum of salary for the sales department, and I ask you to use sum if, what you will say is, okay, this is sales, right? The sales department, isn't it? And then you tell me equals to sum if. The range where I want to apply the criteria is the department column, right? Comma. Then the criteria is that what? It should be sales. So I'll click sales, comma, and then the sum range is the salary column. I'll highlight that, close my bracket, and press enter. Okay. Sorry about the wrong format. So it's giving me $2,592,013. Okay, using sum if. So what pivot table will do simply is that it will look for, okay, what are the distinct items in these columns, and it will do a sum if for everything. So it will check for all the categories: sales, technology, human resources, and it will do a sum if for each one of them. Okay, it brought out a date because I have previously formatted that column as a date before. Okay, you see that anywhere I click in this cell, if you look up here, it's showing dates. Okay, I've worked on this data set before I even sent it to you. It might do the same thing on your system. Before I sent it to you, and I formatted those cells as dates. That is why I brought out dates. All right. So now, that is the idea of pivot tables. So if I'm going to pivot a data, what it will do is that, okay, it will aggregate, it will group the categories. If I do for gender now, okay, let me do my filtering If I do for gender, it will look, okay, what are the genders I have in this column? Female, male, non-binary. So those are what it will arrange on the rows and then do a sum if or a count if for me. Okay, so you can see that really the basis of pivot table and the likes is really sum if, count ifs, and the like. That is the reason why, that is one of the reasons why we need to teach those functions so that you get, oh, this is what the pivot table is doing. Okay, so now I said to insert a pivot table, it is easier to first turn your data set to a proper table. And remember, I emphasized on the difference between normal table and pivot table. Am I right? So I made sure to emphasize between the difference between the normal table and the pivot table. For those of you just joining, welcome back. We're just doing a brief recap on pivot tables. A quick announcement, tomorrow is your test, Sunday, 7 p.m. Don't miss it. Watch out for the link on the WhatsApp platform. All right, so I said always make sure that, okay, you first convert that data to a table first. And how do you do that? Simply Control A to highlight the entire data. Okay, where I click to bring out filters. We've been doing this since class 2. Except you are just joining today. I don't expect you to ask that question. Since class 2, when we started looking at sort and filter, we showed everything explicitly, and we have even used it since then. So highlight your entire data, okay, and then come over to insert. All right, now under the insert tab, click on table to insert table. Okay, so once you click on, it's not like it's inserting a new table, okay? It is simply organizing your data. All right, it is simply organizing your data. Now you will see something. If I click insert, I want you to see something quickly. Now see something. If I come here, if I say I want to reference a cell, you know that this data is not a table yet. If I say equals to, and then I say I want to reference a cell, it says O3, isn't it? Or if I say equals to sum, and then I click the column O, equals to sum, open bracket, and I click this column O, you see the reference. It gives me a range, O:O, meaning every cell in column O. Okay, but if the data is a table, okay, Control A to highlight everything, and then I convert it to a table. Insert table, my table has headers, okay. Now, the data is a table. How do I know? Whenever I click on any part of the table, it brings out a new column header titled Table Design. You can see it here. Okay, now under Table Design, you can rename your table, but we'll come back to that. Now, having this table like this, see what happens if I try to reference a cell here. If I say equals to sum, open bracket, and I click a particular cell, do you see what it says? It does not, when you treat something as a table, okay, it does not, when you convert a range to a table, a range is just like group of cells. Okay, so this entire group of cells where our data is have been converted to a table. So it does not treat cells individually again. Rather, it treats them by column because each column is a field. So you see that maybe I click a particular cell, you see how it references it references the name of the table, which is table 1, and then the name of the column in square brackets. So if I press enter like this, it's giving me that particular cell. But you can see how it referenced it. Okay? At salary, meaning a particular row in the salary column. But if I say equals to sum, open bracket, and I reference this entire, what's it called? Or let me just click this all the way down. You see how it referenced it? If I press enter, okay, so now you can convert your table back to a range of cells, okay, by simply coming back to your, once you click your table, come back to table design, click table design, okay, and then come back to where you have convert to range. So if you convert the table back into a normal range of cells, okay, now why are we converting our data from range to table first before we start talking about pivot table? I gave us the reason why. I said, number one, it makes it easier for you to insert your pivot table when you know you're not dealing with a range, especially if you have like two different tables in one sheet. Okay, so all I have to do now, I'm going to rename my table first over here. I'll call this employees. Employees. And press enter. Okay. Now, under the employees table, I have this data, isn't it? Beautiful. If I want to summarize this table with using a pivot table, okay, I want to summarize this table now using a pivot table. Very easily, all I have to do is just come up here and click where I have summarize with pivot table. That was one method I showed us in the last class. Okay, so if I click summarize with pivot table, it brings out this box. All I need to do is just click OK. It inserts a pivot table here, isn't it? Then I said another way to insert a pivot table is if you're on that sheet like this, you can simply click insert. Okay, now if you click insert, click pivot table. Once you click pivot table, it selects the correct table name, which is employees, and then you can click where you want it to be placed in the new worksheet. Click OK. All right. Now, another way to insert it is if you are in a new worksheet, okay, you're not in your data sheet, or you're in a new worksheet. How can you insert the pivot table here? Oh, simply come over to that, then click on pivot table. Now, because you are not where your data is, it cannot automatically detect the data. So you have to type the name of the table here. The name of the table is employees. And I'll click OK. It inserted here. And then finally, another way I told us you can insert it is to highlight the entire pivot table, copy it, Ctrl+C, then go elsewhere and paste it, Ctrl+V. It will insert a new pivot table for you. Okay, then I remember telling us that for your pivot table as well, let me delete all this. I remember telling us that for your pivot table as well, you have two new tabs created for you: pivot table analyze and design. All right. Now, I also said that you can give your pivot table a name. It's different from the name you are giving your table. Okay. Now, if you click anywhere on your pivot table, you will have this right pane or panel here, pivot table fields. You will have it here. But once you click outside your pivot table, it disappears. If you click anywhere on your pivot table again, it comes back. Okay? But what if you click on your pivot table and it is not showing like this? You can see, I'm clicking on my pivot table and nothing is showing. It is because I have already closed it manually. Okay? All I have to do is come back to the pivot table analyze tab here and then select field list over here. All right. Now, I remember telling us as well that this is not how yours will show by default. It's most likely going to show like this, your pivot table fields. Okay. Now, to make it easier for me to drag and drop fields, I change the layout of my own by clicking this setting icon here and then changing it to this particular one. It makes it easier for me to select fields and drop them in where they need to be. Okay. I also remember telling us that whenever you make a change to your data set, okay. For instance, now my column headers, I have employee ID, first name, last name, gender, age, business travel, and so on and so forth. Let's say this gender now, I change the column from gender to sex. Okay. If I come to my sheet, my pivot table, on the pivot field, what do I have? I still have gender, isn't it? If I want any changes that I made in my main data, it does not have to be the column header alone. Anywhere in your data that you make changes, before it can reflect in your pivot table, you need to click on your pivot table, come over to pivot table analyze, this tab here, click on it, and then click on refresh. Once I click on refresh, bam, look at my pivot table fields now. You can see there is no more gender that is there. Is what? Sex. Okay? So I'll change it back to gender. Come here. And then I'll refresh. And it changes back to gender. Do you see that? Okay? So the same way you filter in what's it called, your main data set, you can check through each one of them like this and just see the values you have in each column. If it's department, I can click this arrow here to show me, okay, these are the distinct values you have, like that. All right. And then I began to take us through some analysis. Okay. So this is where our work now begins mainly. So I've done a brief recap. Okay. Now let us start our work. Now, the rows here, columns, values are simply fields that you use in interacting with your pivot table. How you want your pivot table to analyze the data. Okay? Remember, you have distinct values in each column. For instance, now, the gender. If I drag the gender to rows, see how it appears. Let me zoom in. This is how it will appear. It will place each category in the gender column on different rows. Okay? Different rows, but the same column. Okay? Different rows, but the same column. All right. Now, someone asked a question, why grand total on gender? Now, grand total is because it's weighting. Okay? Because whenever you use a pivot table, you want to analyze something, you want to summarize something. So are you getting the sum of something or the count of something? If it's the count of gender or the sum of salary for gender, okay, it will perform a total in this cell for you. Let's look at an example. If I say sum the salary, I will drag the salary to the values field. Once it gives me the sum for each gender, it will now perform the total at the end. Okay, so do you now see? Or before I get there, let me just continue at my pace. Okay, now this is how it will appear when you put it on the rows. But if you put it on the columns, it will appear on the same row but different columns. Okay, so you might say, I can make use of any one, but usually when you are just dealing with one variable like this, it is usually good to just make use of the rows and then have your values in the values field here. Okay, if it's on the column, this is how it will appear. Okay, so we usually prefer putting it in the rows. Another reason is because of how your pivot charts will look like. So if you want your pivot chart to come out properly, you start from the categories on the rows first, unless you are now pairing it or comparing it against another categorical variable. Then you can have one on rows, you can have one on columns. But we'll get to that, that's a bit advanced. Now, moving on. Okay, moving on. Now, okay, gender, salary. Now, this here is giving me the sum of salary by the gender. The sum of salary by what? By the gender. Okay, if I want to insert my dollar, blah, 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 I can highlight all the figures and then just come over here, insert currency, and I'm good to go. Okay, now, when you take a quantitative variable, quantitative data, and put it in values, it automatically takes which aggregation? I need answers from what you can see. Which aggregation does it use automatically? Currency is not an aggregation. Okay? Automatically, it makes use of sum. Okay? Automatically, it makes use of sum. Sum is the aggregate function there. Okay? The aggregation it is making is sum. It is summing it. It is summing the salary. So any quantitative variable that you put in values, okay? Let me drag salary out. Now, distance from home in kilometers. See it here. Where is it? This is it here. In kilometers. It's a quantitative variable, isn't it? See what happens if I drag it to values. You see that it takes the sum automatically. Even though there's not meant to be dollar there, I can easily remove that. But you can see that it took the sum automatically. Okay, if I put the age there, because the age too is numbers, it automatically take the sum. Doing something like this is totally wrong, okay? But I'm just showing you that any quantitative variable you put on your values, automatically it takes the sum. But you might want to change it. I mean, the pivot table will not restrict you to only calculating sum. What if I don't want to calculate sum? What if I want to calculate average? I want to calculate the minimum amount or the maximum amount or something else. What then do I do? It's very easy now. All you have to do is to Now, there are multiple ways, okay? On your values field here, where you have sum of salary, you can click this drop down arrow and then select value field settings. Now, from the value field settings, you can change the summarization. You can see summarize values by. Currently, it is on sum. You can change the summarization to any other one here that you select. Do you see that? Okay. So if I say, okay, change it to count, and I say, okay, it changes it to count. Okay. If I say, okay, let's change it to average, I come to average. Okay. It gives me the average salary by gender. The average salary by gender. Okay, now I don't have to limit myself to just one particular comparison per pivot chart. What if I want to see the sum of salary, the average of salary, the minimum salary, the maximum salary in one chart? What do I do? It's very simple. I put my gender in rows, my salary in values. 1, I'll put it again 2, put it again 3, put it again 4. Okay. So 4. All right. Now, the first one says sum of salary, which I am okay with. The second one, I want to change it to average. How did I get value field? All you need to do is right click on that column and then scroll down. You have value field settings. So click on it. What do you want to get? You want to change it to average this time around. I'll click average and I'll click OK. Now I have sum of salary, I have average of salary. I can double click here to change the name. Okay. And you can see that once I double click, it brings out the value field settings as well. And say okay. So this third one now, I want to change it to maximum salary. So I can double click. It takes me straight to value field settings. I want to get the maximum. I'll remove this 3 that is in the title, max of salary. I'll say okay. Okay, this one as well, double click. I'll do minimum, mean of salary. I'll say okay. All right, so can you see that easily? Okay, so if you don't want this grand total to show here, you can simply disable it actually by coming to the design pane at the top. Design, where you have grand totals. Here, you tell it okay, off for rows and columns or on for rows and columns, whatever option you want. I can say off. You see now that it removes the grand total automatically. Do you see that? So if I want it back, I'll simply go back there. I'll say on. Okay. My pivot table color as well, I can change it from here to whichever one I like. All right. Now, whenever I have my pivot table showing like this, I can see the particular data that references a said category. For instance, female. If I want to say, okay, let me see the details of all the female that it is summing the salary, all I need to do is double click on that particular salary. So now I came on this sheet. I double clicked on the sum of salary for females, this value. Once I double click, it took me to this sheet. You will see that everybody here is a female. If you check the gender. Okay, if I come back here, if I double click on the salary for male, pam pam, it opens a new sheet for me. Everybody here are males, or is a male. If I do the same thing for non-binary, pam pam, you see the detail for non-binary. Okay, so I'm going to delete this back. I'll delete this as well. This. Now, I want to show you some expo. Okay, what is the meaning of non-binary? We'll ask the Oyinbos. Okay, it's the Oyinbos who ask what they mean by non-binary on their data set. Okay, so now I want to show you something quickly. I don't have a column for costs. I don't have a column for costs. This is just salary here. Okay, let me see if I have on this data set I sent to us. If I have cost and price. I have sales, quantity, discount, profit. Okay, I don't have cost as well. I don't have cost as well. I'm looking for something that maybe I'll have cost on it. I want to use it to show us calculated fields. Let me see. What can I do? Okay. Okay. Let's do it like this. Now, let's say I want to find out, or I want to increase everybody's salary. Okay, or I want to multiply the salary by 2. All right. What can I do? If you want to take out the detail of something, all you have to do is just drag it out of the field. I'm on the values column or the values field. Just drag it out. Take and drag it out. That's all. Okay. So now I have sum of salary. I want a new field titled profit. Okay. No, salary and profit. No. That's not possible. Okay. I think this is good. So now I'm on the salary column. I want a new field that will be titled increase, and the increase will be calculated by so the increase will simply be the 10% of the salary. Okay, so I want to show 10% of the salary. What is 10% of the salary? And I want it to be a particular field like this. I don't need to come back to my data to create that column. Okay? You can if you want to. But from my pivot table here, I can simply do it by coming over to where I have on my pivot table analyze. Now pay attention. Pivot table analyze. Okay. I'll come over to where I have fields, items, and sets. I'll click here. And I'll click on calculated field. I'll click here. The name of the field is salary increase. Okay. The formula would be what? I'll say I want to calculate 10% of salary, isn't it? Where's the salary column? This is the salary column. Now, 10% of salary will be what? Open bracket. 10 divided by 100. Isn't it? Close my bracket. And I'll say times. I don't know if you can see this. Okay. 10 divided by 100 in brackets. Then I'll say times what? Times the salary. I will not click salary. And I will say insert field. Okay. Then I will just say add. Once I add, you see that I have salary increase here now. And I'll click OK. I'm done. Okay. So if I check salary increase now, do you see that? It gives me 10%. 10% of this amount is this. Okay. So if I want to check it by each employee, maybe not by gender. Okay, maybe I'm not checking it by gender. Let's remove gender away. Okay, let's check it by employee ID. So for each employee, this employee now, this is his salary. Okay, this is the increase of his salary or 10% of his salary. For this employee, see the salary, see the 10%. Okay, so you see how calculated fields work. It would have been easier if we had a data set that had cost, unit price. Oh, that's true, Seth. The data set that I gave you that time to clean, it has that, what's it called? So you might be performing something like that as an assignment. Okay. So it doesn't really affect the set. Okay. It doesn't affect the data set itself. If you come back here, there's nothing like that. Okay, it's simply a formula in there. It's simply a formula. Okay, now when you're ready to use it, pivot table will just quickly calculate it for you. Okay, now let us now go into what's it called? Okay, let's answer questions here today, and then answer some questions, and then demonstrate pivot charts. All right. So how do you disable the formula? You can simply drag it out of here or untick it. Okay, untick it. If you tick it back, it takes it back there. If you double click it to bring out a row for you, okay, corresponding to the data for that particular employee, but it will not show any column for salary increase. All right. So let us answer 2 questions, just 2 questions. Okay, just 2 questions. Let's see. Let's say I have my pivot table. Okay, I have my pivot table. Now, because the way the questions will come, they won't tell you drag this one to rows, drag this one to values. What answer do you have? Hooray! No. The question will just come like this. What is the highest earning department? You see that? That is how the question will come. What is the highest earning department? Or which department has the highest total salary? Which department has the highest total salary? Now, if you see a question like that, what comes to your mind? I will first read the question. Which department has the highest total salary? So I need to see the departments and I need to see their total salaries. So when I see the total salaries for each department, then I can know who is the highest. So what I need first is the department and their total salary. And then my mind tells me again, total salary is simply the sum of the salary, isn't it? So I'm doing sum of the salary by the department. Then I know how to make use of my pivot table. Okay, so what do? I will drag my department to rows. I will drag my salary to values. Okay, now I have the sum of salary by department. All right, from this now, sorry. From this now, which department has the highest total salary? With what you are saying, someone actually said HR. Alfred. Did you really say HR? So you see that the question will not come direct. Do you see that? It's a simple question. Your boss asks you, we've been paying out too much salaries. Which department really is the highest earning? I think we need to cut down on some staffs. Which department is the highest earning? Which department has more, employees? The highest number of employees. Okay, so if they ask me that question, which department has the highest number of employees? What do you think I can do regarding that question on the pivot table? Highest number of employees. How do I know the number of items in a department? Or how do I know the number of items in a bag? Let's start from there. If they ask me how many balls are in that bag, how can I know? I will go to the bag and do what? And count. Thank you very much. Beautiful. I will go to the bag and count. So it means if they ask you how many or what is the department with the highest number of, it means they want you to take a count. So count the employees in the department, in each department. So what I will do simply, let me copy this, paste it here. Okay, so I'm not looking at it by salary. All right, so now in each department, I want to count the employees. Now, which field here best denotes an employee? Which field best denotes an employee? Let's respond. If you don't respond, whatever is in your mind, just say it. If you are wrong, we'll give you an answer. We'll correct you and let you know why you are wrong. Okay? But if you leave it to those that have an idea about it already, they will take all the light. Okay? So, say what you have in your mind. All right? Now, employee ID. best denote an employee. Why? Because each employee in a company has a unique employee ID. So if I count the employee IDs I have, I'm simply counting the employees. But if you say department, if I count the department, I might have just 3 departments. Okay? So all I need to do simply is to say, okay, count the number of employees. I'll just drag employee ID to values. And automatically, what does it do? It takes the count. I need to remove this $sign from here. Let me change it back to general. Do you see that? Automatically, it takes the what? The count. Okay? It takes the count. So now I know that, okay, I have 6 employees in human resources. I have 19 employees in sales department. I have 35 in technology department. Okay? So if you now ask me, what is the average salary by education field? Let's see. The average salary, now, okay, if you get into this education field, on average, this is how much we'll be earning in our company. How do we go about calculating that? So let's do that, and then we'll move into the data set I sent for us and look at that for today. So now, if I don't want to copy and paste the pivot table, what did I say I can do? I can come to insert pivot table. I'll type the name of that table, employees. And I'll say what? Enter. And it will insert my pivot table for me easily. So now the question is a very simple question. What did they say we should calculate? They said we should calculate the average salary by the education field. So in our company, on average, if this is your education field, this is how much you are expected to be earning. So I'm not going to answer that question. So I need somebody to help us. I need someone that would answer that question for us. I need someone that will. And I need someone that I have not been hearing regularly. Because if the people that have an idea about it raise up their hand and we call them, you would complain that we are not involving you. So try it out. If you are wrong, the highest we'll do is just to explain to you why you are wrong and then correct you. And you learn from that. So quickly, let's answer that question and then we move on to what's it called? I'll just show one pivot chart here and then we'll move on to the data sets we have for today. So let's be fast. The time is not on our side again. What is the average? Okay, we're already responding. I thought someone was going to raise their hand and that's true. So what is the average salary by education field? The average salary by education field. All right, beautiful. So one thing that I see that is reoccurring is drag the education field to rows. To first show you the education fields that are there. Okay, so you see the education fields, isn't it? Then we want to see the average salary. So it means we will first drag the salary to values. And automatically, the salary will take sum. first, isn't it? But we want to see the average, right? So I'll come here, I'll double click the header, and I'll change it to average and say, okay. And I have the average automatically. So I'll simply include my currency, like that. So do you see that? So averagely, on average, those that their education field is business studies are earning lesser. Okay, so good job, everyone. Education field to rows, then salary to value, and we change to average. Okay, so you can see the thinking process when trying to answer questions using pivot tables. Nobody will tell you, put education field in rows, put this in values. No, he will just ask you a direct question. You are the one that needs to interpret the question to know where each field is going to. Okay, now, aside looking at it by education field, you can also look at it by gender. If I drag gender to columns, okay, now it's showing me the average salary for females in business studies field, for females in computer science field. I am now comparing more than 2 variables. Okay, so Loremi, can you see that now? I am now comparing more than 2 variables. All right. So, Oyinlola, you most likely put education instead of education field in your rows. Check it very well. It should be education field, not education. So, you can compare 2 attributes like this. Okay, so let me just drag the gender out back and focus on education field and average salary. So finally, let's insert one chart and then we'll go and look at the main data set. So if I want to insert a pivot chart, okay, a pivot chart simply denotes a chart that is connected to a pivot table. You can create charts from your normal table as well, but it's usually best to do so from a pivot table because it allows you to slice. We'll see that when we start talking about dashboard. Okay, so pivot charts. I am currently on my data. All I need to do is go up to where I have my pivot table analyzed and then select pivot chart from here. Do you see that? I will start dropping attendance at the middle of the class, and I will not drop at the end of the class because I've noticed that some people don't join the class. Towards the end, around 8:40, 8:45, I just noticed that the attendance will increase by like 5 to 7 people. And once people sign attendance, I noticed that it will just automatically drop down below 100. That's what I will be doing now. Once I drop the attendance at the middle of the class and you are not there, that's the end. So now, pivot charts. Once I click on pivot charts, do you see the number of charts it brings out? Okay, so please, for sanity's sake and a custom ritual in the data space, okay, there is a silent rule that don't use 3D chart. Now, this is a 3D chart. You see these ones that look like that look realistic. These are 3D charts. Okay? There's a silent rule. Don't make use of 3D charts. Okay? So just stick to 2D charts like this. All right? Now, I have clustered column charts. I can use this or use the bar chart. Okay, so if I use the bar chart and I say, okay, it inserts my chart for me. Do you see this? Let me zoom out a bit and expand the chart. And you have created your first chart in Excel. So building on this, you'll be creating other charts from the next data set and in the next class, which you later on combine to become one dashboard. Okay, so you can see that it's getting more interesting. You see now to analyze, answer questions using pivot tables. But we'll still look at some examples again using the next data set. So I'm going to open that data set that I sent to us, data set for pivot tables that I sent to us this evening. Okay, data set for pivot tables. All right, so here we'll be demonstrating pivot tables, pivot charts likewise. All right, but quickly in this data set, I quickly noticed something. I have sales, location, product, payment methods. Quickly, recall. Can I send it? Are you on the WhatsApp group chat? Do you go through the messages there at all? This data set has been sent tonight. The data set has been sent this night. Okay. How many of us received the data set? Can you indicate if you did? Thank you. So now, back to this data. So quickly, my people, what do you notice? I have location, products, payment methods, sales. So what do we notice? What do we notice? What do we notice? What do we notice about the data? Not in table format, okay. What again? I'm having 4 sheets. Some are more than once. Not necessarily. I mean, in the previous data as well, some were more than once. It just depends on that particular record. So you can have, for instance, now this data set is talking about people that purchase items from an online retail store. Okay, so the device they use, most people use web or the app. Okay, so it will be appearing again and again and again for that particular person. But you can see that the customer ID is different. So you know that it's a different person that logged in at that time to purchase that item. Okay. Beautiful. Someone has said it. It needs consolidation. Okay. It needs consolidation. Do you see that? Okay. The attendance. Why are you requesting for the attendance now? I've not sent it. And I need you to know that, okay, I sent the attendance on my own accord. Okay, you can't just